Today's awesome dude Luik is Shang Qin. He was born in Shanxi during the early days of the Han Dynasty, when the Xiongnu Empire was causing all sorts of ruckus. Had built the Great Wall to keep the Xiongnu from invading all the time, and had actually succeeded in driving them way up north, but by this time, the Xiongnu were back. The death of coincided with Modu Chanyu's ascension to the Shanyu throne. This guy was ruthless. Modu became the Shanyu by killing the previous Shanyu, who just happened to be his father. Sometimes he would test the loyalty of his soldiers by ordering them to kill their favorite wife or horse. If they even so much as hesitated, they'd be executed immediately. For the Emperor of China, these Xiongnu were nothing but trouble. Was sent out west to make friends with the Yushi people, who were also victims of Xiongnu attacks. The Chinese wanted to make friends with the enemy of their enemy, and team up with the Yushi to defeat the Xiongnu. Unfortunately, the only way could reach the Yushi was to go through Xiongnu territory. They apprehended and enslaved him for 10 years. Eventually, escaped and was able to resume his mission. He continued west to where the Yushi was supposed to be, only to find out that they had moved even further west. He did, however, find the Dayun people living in what is today Uzbekistan. The Dayun were Greeks left over from when had come through and conquered everything a few years earlier. They had stuff that had never even seen before. Cool stuff like alfalfa that they used to feed their horses, and grapes that they used to make wine. And their horses were amazing, way better than the horses they had back in China. Learned the whereabouts of the Yushi, and could, finally, after a 10-year delay, complete his mission. Unfortunately, the Yushi weren't interested in aligning themselves with China. They had migrated far enough west to escape the Xiongnu attacks, and were happy with the peaceful life they led. Had failed. Before returning home with the bad news, he spent a year traveling around the region, learning all kinds of interesting things about nations that at the time were unknown to China. Like the Greco-Bactrian kingdom surprised him with all the Chinese stuff they had in their markets. At their capital in what is today Afghanistan, he saw cloth that he recognized was from... They told him they got it from merchants in India. Although didn't get a chance to visit, he did learn of India, Persia, and Mesopotamia. On his way back to China, was again captured and imprisoned by the Xiongnu. Fortunately, this time it only took him 2 years to escape. When finally got back home, folks were disappointed that he had failed to form an alliance with the Yushi, and for taking so long. He did have some valuable information though. The emperor learned that not everyone to the west was a barbaric nomad. There were agricultural societies and sophisticated city dwellers who had a desire for Chinese goods, militarily weak people who desired peace and preferred commerce over violence, and they had horses that could be used to defeat the Xiongnu. This was all very intriguing and he sent out on a few more expeditions. Pretty soon lots of envoys and embassies were going out. This was the beginning of the Silk Road, the exchange of livestock, crops, manufactured goods, cultures, ideas, science, art, religion. For the first time, the eastern and westernmost empires were in communication. Failed in his quest to secure a military alliance. Instead, he took the initiative to explore and learn and document information about all the new countries with which he came into contact. Then he went back to the emperor, not having completed his mission, but having given himself a new one. Came back 13 years later talking about, "Oh, nah, I didn't do what you wanted, but I took a nice vacation and brought you some souvenirs." Now, Chinese emperors tend to be notorious for killing people who disobeyed their command or they suspected of insubordination, and was certainly no exception. He executed tens of thousands of people. Wasn't scared. He knew he had failed. He could have stayed with the Yushi, or the Taiyuan, or the Greco-Bactrians, or the Kanju, or the Xiongnu when they captured him for a second time. That he went back is pretty amazing. Was supposed to get China an ally. Instead, he introduced to them the rest of the world. The Yushi, who was supposed to get to ally with China, kept on moving south. A couple of hundred years later, after they had settled in India, the Yushi people were known to the west as the Kushan. Under the leadership of the Kushan had themselves quite an empire, and were the first ones who introduced Buddhism to China. The Xiongnu, who caused so much trouble in China, eventually kind of lost their power and identity and just sort of got assimilated. Or did they? About the same time the Xiongnu disappeared from China, a group of nomadic warriors from Central Asia began attacking and conquering Europe. No one knows from whence the Huns came, but the problems the Xiongnu gave the Chinese were nothing compared to what the Huns gave the Romans, especially under this guy. Silk might not have been the only Chinese export to the West.